Hi, folks. Hope you're doing amazing. Now, it's no surprise to anyone at this point, the Democrats have been doing the most. They accuse everyone under the sun that opposes them of being racist, but the reality is that they're the real racists. See, over time, they've constructed an explicitly anti-white coalition, one designed to politically, culturally, and demographically target and displace the white European population in this country. That's what their true agenda has always been about, this Marxist upheaval of the American order. And today, we're going to watch how this ideology has played out, not just in politics, but culturally as well. And there's no clearer example of this in a recent clip that went viral featuring Democrat Representative Jean Wu, who openly said the quiet part out loud. Let's take a look.
I always tell people the day the Latino, African American, Asian, and other communities realize that they share the same oppressor is the day we start winning. Because we are the majority in this country now. We have the ability to take over this country and to do what is needed for everyone and to make things fair. But the problem is our communities are divided. They're completely divided.
I'm just going to say this outright. This is genocidal language. There's no other honest way to describe this. What Representative Jean Wu is advocating here is the formation of a rigid, tribalized racial coalition defined by opposition to the white population, framed explicitly in terms of taking over the country. That isn't civil rights rhetoric, folks. It's zero-sum racial power politics, and history shows it leads only to deeper division and eventual collapse of a nation. We've seen versions of this logic play out repeatedly, and it never produces fairness or any sort of cohesion. It produces fragmentation. It also rests on a fundamental misrepresentation of who Latinos actually are. The idea that Latino communities can be spoken for as a single racial bloc or instructed on who they must band with is simply wrong. Many Latinos have deep European roots: Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, French, Dutch, even English, and large portions of Latin America are predominantly of European descent. The assumption that these communities will permanently align with whiteness ignores basic reality and historical patterns of assimilation, much like the Italians and Irish, once deemed non-white in the U.S., but who ultimately integrated into the broader European-derived population. Now, more importantly, even if such a displacement fantasy from Representative Wu succeeded, it would immediately collapse into internal conflict as racial factions turned on one another for position of power. And needless to say, that's not a path for a stable, unified, homogenous nation. It's a recipe for dissolving a country from within through racialized politics that incentivize this sort of retarded grievance. Now, since we're on the topic of Latino identity politics and the way Democrat grievance culture operates, let's move on to the next example of how whiteness, and more broadly American national identity, is being deliberately minimized and displaced. Yesterday was the Super Bowl, and the halftime show featured Bad Bunny delivering what was, by any honest cultural standard, one of the weakest and most disengaging performances in Super Bowl history. It was flat, low energy, and visibly failed to move the live crowd, despite the NFL clearly sweetening up the broadcast with edited in cheers and the crowd just being excited. That didn't actually reflect the actual atmosphere in the stadium or across most of the country, as we will see in a second. But the real issue wasn't just the quality of the performance, it was the message embedded in it. For 14 minutes, the performance was entirely in Spanish, framed not as a celebration of American diversity within a shared civic culture, but as a kind of cultural rebuke to American and North American identity itself. And it culminated in a globalist spectacle where flags from across Latin America and even beyond were elevated while the American flag was visually subordinated, literally dropping behind them at one point. At one point as well, Bad Bunny held only the Puerto Rican flag, despite Puerto Rico being a U.S. territory, which would be the equivalent of a California artist stopping mid-performance to wave a California state flag at the Super Bowl. No one would interpret that as normal or unifying. It would be seen rightly as bizarre and pointed. And I think it goes without saying that this wasn't the Olympics, which are explicitly international, and it's especially ironic given that the Winter Olympics are actually happening right now. To choose to do this sort of globalized performance at a uniquely American event, centered on a sport that isn't global, not international, and not multicultural by design. It's an American celebration of American excellence. If NFL ownership thinks this is how you globalize this sport, they're mistaken. All this accomplished was undermining the country hosting the event and giving a massive platform to someone with no interest in honoring America. And we know this contrast matters because performers like you two, who played shortly after 9/11, managed to be culturally serious without turning the stage into a celebration of every country except the United States. Now, no one is saying Bad Bunny needed to wrap himself in the American flag, but deliberately elevating everything over America at America's biggest sporting event is functionally a middle finger to the host nation. Add to that the cultural content itself. Even many Spanish speakers unfamiliar with Bad Bunny noted online they couldn't understand much of what he was saying. And when you actually examine his lyrics, they revolve around hyper-sexualized, low-effort themes that reject discipline, virtue, and restraint. This isn't about censorship or demanding a gospel performance of sorts. Free speech cuts both ways. You can say whatever you want, but this is about recognizing what our institutions choose to elevate. A spectacle built around impulse, sexual excess, and empty status signaling doesn't just reflect cultural decline. It actually accelerates it, especially for young men already trapped in cycles of distraction like pornography, which diminishes their agency. And all that being said, in this media ecosystem dominated by this sort of leftist Marxist rhetoric, this moment reveals something deeper, a deliberate shift away from shared national meaning, a shared homogenous identity, toward fragmented identity performance where America is treated not as a home to be stewarded, but as a backdrop to be critiqued, displaced, and ultimately hollowed out so other nations can just pick apart our wealth. Now, all that being said, while Bad Bunny's performance received glowing reviews on leftist Twitter, that praise was overwhelmingly driven by foreigners who don't actually live in America. When you look at the accounts reacting positively and going viral for supporting it, it's either the Dean Withers of the world, the type of figures who openly hate this country, or people abroad praising what was essentially a piece of globalist propaganda garbage. Meanwhile, at the actual stadium where actual Americans were witnessing this garbage, the reaction was visibly underwhelming. Multiple videos show Bad Bunny performing to a crowd that was barely reacting at all. People just standing still, no energy, no engagement, just completely bored, which contradicted the hype that was manufactured online. It's never been more evident that Americans aren't buying this sort of goy slop. We're done with it. Nobody wants this. It's garbage. Nobody likes it. Stop playing it and stop trying to force it down our throats. And look, yes, there were a handful of people there at the stadium who were clearly enjoying themselves. Their videos are going viral, and that's precisely the point. They're going viral because those people themselves seem genuinely shocked that almost nobody else liked that trash. Nobody's dancing because nobody likes this trash. And that reaction tells you more about the moment we're in than any trending hashtag ever could. This is America. And no, that doesn't mean every performance has to be red, white, and blue patriotism, but it does mean you should probably offer something Americans actually enjoy at America's biggest cultural event of the year. What we're seeing instead are institutions pushing a kind of globalist cultural product that assumes the audience will comply out of obligation rather than actual enthusiasm, and the Super Bowl crowd's visible disinterest blows that assumption apart. The defense you hear, America is diverse, this is inclusion, you're just uncomfortable, misses the point entirely. Diversity doesn't mean erasing national context, national identity, and inclusion doesn't mean forcing a country to pretend it has no culture. The performance wasn't embraced because it wasn't made for the audience standing in front of it. It was made as a statement at them. And the content itself reflects a broader cultural drift toward low-effort, impulse-driven spectacle, music designed less to inspire than to numb, to reduce everything to rhythm, desire, and just simple distraction. It's goy slop, okay? I grew up around Brazilian pop culture, and I've seen where that road leads. Entertainment optimized for minimal restraint, minimal meaning, and maximum sensory stimulation so it can divorce you from the reality of who owns you. There's zero sophistication. It's just pure cultural regression. The left's media and cultural institutions keep betting that Americans will eventually be trained into liking whatever this garbage is. But moments like this reveal the opposite. People aren't confused. They're just disengaged. They're going to change the channel, okay? Treat America like America, not like an empty stage for ideological signaling, not like this country doesn't have an identity and a culture of its own. Stop trying to force the country into becoming something that it isn't and it doesn't want to be. Now, all that being said, Turning Point USA ran a competing halftime show that at one point drew several million viewers. It offered a clear alternative, one centered on a more patriotic and faith-based message. Personally, I have my own cultural criticisms of it, but that's not the most interesting part. What is interesting is this viral clip circulating of a man completely crashing out after a bar owner decided to switch off Bad Bunny and put on the Turning Point USA halftime show instead. The bar owner obviously has a right to change the channel to whatever he wants, and frankly, that's a perfectly reasonable decision to do considering what the NFL decided to broadcast. You don't have to support content you think is garbage, and people are well within their rights to choose not to amplify cultural goy slop being pushed on them.
I came here for the halftime show.
I came here for the halftime show. Did you?
Bad Bunny at the halftime show.
Because I put this halftime show on. Because this is what the majority. If you filming me, get that out of my
I'm
face.
filming you. Why are you doing that?
You can
Why
get out
didn't you
now.
play Bad
Get out,
Bunny?
because the majority
I'm gonna
of my
pay.
customers-
Get out.
Hey,
I'm gonna
Luke,
pay first.
Luke, this is why.
I gotta pay
This is
first.
why I said no.
I gotta pay first. But I'm asking a
Good,
question.
go pay.
I'm not being
You want me
violent.
to cash you out? I'll cash you
Yeah,
out.
I gotta
I
pay
got you.
first.
Yeah,
I
well,
shouldn't pay
what's your
because
tab
I came here
under?
for the full experience.
What's your
I
tab
got
under?
experience.
Of which
The
show to
fullest
put
Super
on.
Bowl
Okay,
experience.
what's your tab under?
All right? I came here for the full Super Bowl experience. Are you the bouncer? Are you the manager? Are you the bouncer, the manager?
He's the manager.
All right, I'm speaking to him, not
Yeah.
you. You do what you do, and I talk to him.
You don't
I
tell
came
him what
here
to
for
do.
the Super Bowl experience. The full Super Bowl
This is the
experience.
halftime show.
This is not the halftime
It
show.
is the halftime show.
No, this is not. This
It's
is
called
not.
the halftime show.
We're at the zoo, and the zoo refuses to play Bad Bunny for some reason.
Good for them.
During the halftime show.
Good
They
for
wanna
them.
Play somebody else.
Don't play it.
All right. I'm gonna put this on my social
There
media.
you go, baby.
Who cares, bro?
All right.
There you go.
appreciate that, actually.
There's your
Made me
tab.
some
You have
customers.
you have a good night. Thank you.
You might get customers. You might lose a lot of customers because you might look like a
I guess we'll
racist.
see.
All right.
guess
You
we'll
might
see.
look like a racist.
So do you.
Why?
You're a racist.
Why?
You're complaining about the show.
This show right here is not
All right,
the show.
can we do me
This
a
is not
favor?
part of the Super
I
Bowl.
have a bunch of other things that we have
I
to
came here for
do.
the Super Bowl experience. This is not part of the Super Bowl.
So don't come
Okay.
back.
This was not promoted.
Good for that bar manager for standing on business. Imagine being a full-grown man having a full-blown meltdown because he doesn't get to watch Bad Bunny. Because a bar owner exercised his perfectly normal right to change the channel. That reaction tells you everything about where we are culturally, folks. Entitlement dressed up as moral outrage. The spectacle here isn't just this man's tantrum, it's the reflexive move to label the decision racist, as if not broadcasting one particular performer is somehow an attack on an entire race. Imagine the logical leap and mental retardation it takes to arrive at that point. And needless to say, that logic instantly collapses at the most basic application of reasoning. In fact, reducing a massive, diverse audience to a single artist and then insisting that audience must be represented by him on America's biggest sporting stage is the far more racialized move, let's be honest. I mean, the bar owner can perfectly choose to switch to the Turning Point halftime alternative, especially when you consider that the show itself leaned more patriotic and more faith-oriented values that Americans value. And the customer's response of immediate fury because it disrupted the cultural script the left increasingly treats as mandatory is also very telling, okay? Because this is where media and identity politics intersect. Preference becomes an obligation all of a sudden. Dissent becomes some sort of offense, and customer choice gets reframed as the utmost form of discrimination. The meltdown wasn't even about music necessarily. It's about losing control of the cultural narrative for 5 minutes. Imagine that, folks. These people are melting down because they lost a cultural narrative for a few minutes. But all that said, leave it to retards like Joe Scarborough to come up with the most, I would say, bad hot takes of the day about the whole thing.
You're getting the biggest artist in the world. And if you're the NFL and you like capitalism, why not? So I don't know why these socialists hate capitalism so much and they hate a company doing what's best for their bottom line, but they obviously do. I feel sorry for them. Maybe they should read some Noam Chomsky, because this is American capitalism at its best.
Yeah, it was purely American, the capitalism and the message.
Sure, purely American while being entirely in Spanish, yet somehow purely American. That's the absurd inversion coming from Joe Scarborough and his panel here, and it perfectly captures how dishonest the media class has become. These people will look you straight into your face and lie to you if it helps them score a political point. And the claim here that disliking the NFL featuring Bad Bunny at a halftime show makes you a socialist who hates capitalism isn't just wrong. It's deliberately incoherent. What we witnessed wasn't a celebration of American culture at a uniquely American event. It was the opposite. A performance that symbolically elevated everything else over America while treating national identity as something embarrassing and to be sidelined. To respond to criticism of that choice by sneering that viewers should read Noam Chomsky isn't clever irony. It's a bad faith attempt to invert conservative critiques of the left by sarcastically accusing dissenters of the very ideology Scarborough himself has spent years defending in practice. You have to be profoundly un-American to pretend this rhetoric flip makes any sort of sense. And all it does is expose how out of touch these commentators are with the audience they claim to understand. Instead of grappling with why millions of Americans felt alienated, they pathologize disagreement, mock it as ideological failure, and in the process reinforce the growing sense that elite media no longer reflects the country it just wants to lecture us. And look, folks, at what point do we admit that this isn't organic culture? This is being forced down our throats. This is curated signaling pushed by institutions that no longer feel accountable to the people watching. See, when disagreement like this is treated as a moral failure and preferences reframed as ideology, who exactly is being liberated and who is being managed? Ask yourselves, folks, why so many voices rush to shame for disliking Bad Bunny instead of actually having a conversation. They push to mock instead of explaining why it's so important to force you into their ideology. Ask yourselves, folks, why would they rather invert reality than actually confront it? And more importantly, ask yourselves whether you actually recognize the country being presented to you or whether you're being slowly trained to accept a version of America that feels less like home or more like a lecture of what these globalist elites want to turn our country into. Anyway, folks, you tell me what you think in the comments down below. Hope you have a terrific day. Peace.